Okay, well, I might kick this off and we'll let anyone, of course, join in as the presentation goes along. Thanks for dialing in. First of all, I'd just like to say who the company is that's doing the presentation and who am I. So my name's Shannon Moir, and I've been involved in JD Edwards for the last 20 years, and as a role, I've done CNC development and other things in JD Edwards, mainly technical, and now with this latest merger of Myriad IT Services and Fusion 5, I've become the Director of Innovation for the business, and I'll be coming up with more products, hopefully like this, like what you're about to see with ERP Analytics, and that's my role within the business. The coming together of Myriad IT and Fusion 5 has brought together a real powerhouse of JD Edwards Consulting in Australia. We've got over 350 staff in the Southern Hemisphere here, doing a wide range or a myriad of tasks with JD Edwards and other associated technologies. We've got over 750 customers. Not for ERP Analytics, but for our other software services around the world. Important to note what is ERP Analytics, and what we've been able to do is essentially plug Google Analytics into JD Edwards. And so all the insights that you're able to acquire from Google Analytics and all of the great slice and dice utilities and dashboarding facilities and triggers and event handling that you can put into Google Analytics, we've plugged that into JD Edwards. And so what we're able to do is make similar insights with relation to security, with relation to application usage, with in relation to productivity and performance. So we're able to make all those insights with JD Edwards as you might be able to do with the traditional storefront website. And so then what this allows us to do is analyze that data and keep that data historically and slice and dice that data and be sent emails if we want, or we can actually physically log into the site and perform the analysis of that data. I have clients use it in different ways. So I have some of my clients that just want a weekly email of the top 50 users and the top 50 applications for the previous week and what their average load times were. But then I also have clients that use the console and react to problems in their business. Anything that you can do in Google Analytics, you can do with our ERP Analytics. So what we've written is the code that hooks analytics into JD Edwards. So we patch your tools release, but things like Google Sheets. So with Google Sheets, you can actually use APIs to farm your Google Analytics data. So natively in Google Sheets, you can write really complicated slice and dice reports and get all of the information out of analytics natively. So we've got a number of clients both in Australia and around the world currently using ERP Analytics. We have a great range of technologies as well. So we have people on SQL Server, on Oracle and on AS400, and anonymously what we're able to do is baseline people's performance. So what I'm able to do is look at all of my AS400 clients, for example, and I can look at 5 or 6 of those and then compare them with SQL Server clients and Oracle clients. And I can give you a really good idea of, holistically or overall, which of those database technologies gives the best response time. We can also make high-level judgments on the best browser and other associated technologies that you use with JD Edwards, which are going to give you the best performance results. The information, again, you can do a lot of searching on the web and find out exactly what Google Analytics can do and the analysis you can do over the top of Google Analytics. What we've done to make this information more practical in a JD Edwards sense is we've actually started to attach the JD Edwards username, the JD Edwards environment, the JD Edwards actual web server name, and the application stack ID. So we actually get the application ID, so P4210, we get the form name and we get the version. So all of that information is sent to Google Analytics, not to us, to Google Analytics. And then we're able to slice and dice and interpret all this other information like exact timestamps, network information, browser information, and more. We can slice and dice based upon all of those metrics or all of those dimensions. And when I log into Google Analytics soon and show you how to do that, you'll appreciate what we can do with this information. But even with things like the network layer, so you can actually carve your data in based upon which network the people are coming in from, your users are coming in from. You can slice and dice your data based upon the browser or the browser version. So all of this reporting can be done to give you more insights into how your users are using JD Edwards and what applications they're using. There's some really neat things that we can do in Google Analytics as well. I think this is over and if you haven't looked into Google Analytics before, you can do geographic overlays. So if you're part of a global organization or even a countrywide organization, you can actually map user activity based upon performance or based upon application usage or time on screen. You can actually put heat maps with a geographical overlay and see where the best performance in the country is coming from or where the best performance in the world is coming from. And I'll be able to show you that soon as well. Another really nice thing is to use the data, so use the people coming into your ERP. You can do some standard operating environment compliance testing. So you'll be able to see what network they're coming in from, what operating system they're coming in from, and the browser that they're using. And you can ensure that all of your clients are using the standardized browser or the operating environment that you publish out to them. And of course it's fantastic for baseline performance metrics. So we can say average pages, the page load times. We can actually get the data transmit times. We can get the browser render times. There's very accurate performance statistics that are gathered individually for each page load, but we can carve that up based upon daily, monthly, yearly usage. Okay. So what is always, I think, a good idea is for me to give you a high-level overview of the Google Analytics console with relation to JD Edwards. So that's what I'm going to do. But then, once we've gone through a high-level overview, I'm actually going to address how do we evaluate and perform and improve productivity, how to baseline and improve our performance in JD Edwards, and then how to organize your upgrade projects and save money and time while you do it. So let's go back to taking it for a test drive. And then you actually get access to this console when we set you up for Google Analytics. This is the sort of console that you'll be able to see and interpret your JD Edwards data from. And so what you can see here is this particular client, for example, is having approximately 800 users a day, and that's on a Thursday, on a Friday. You can see the usage drops down significantly on Saturday and Sunday, and then comes up again. This is really basic data. What you can see here, but it's only currently on 1 week of time. So if I want to make that for maybe 2 months of time, and I apply that, I can really start to see some trend analysis here. I can see my 5 days a week for the last 2 months, and I can see my usage is pretty high. And even now I could look for an anomaly and say, wow, it seems that Thursday, January the 26th, there was no users. Was there an outage? Was there a problem? But I actually know that that's Australia Day, and so these people have the day off. And so that accounts for the anomaly in the data here where there's no activity on that particular day. What we're comparing here is, January the 1st to March the 1st, but we're seeing over 35,000, we're comparing the data on over 35,000 individual JD Edwards sessions with a unique, based on cookie count, of 2,000 users and loading up over 2 million page views. And on average, these people are logged in for 38 minutes. So I wonder what their timeout's set to. So that's if you're thinking from a pure Google Analytics point of view, that's an amazing session duration. That's got some really special affinity. But for an ERP, that's pretty average. So based upon this 3 months of data too, I can then look at what browser people are coming in on. And I can see here Chrome is the predominant browser with 31,000 sessions, Internet Explorer with 2,800 sessions, and so we go on. And then I can see the various, just the single browser. I can look at the pages per session, session duration, which we saw before, etc. Now some of these metrics, these are the standard reports, so some of these metrics don't make sense for JD Edwards in terms of goal conversions, but a lot of the performance work does. Another really nice thing that we can do from the console, and again you have access to this, is we have a live view. So I could probably choose a North American client just to quickly see that people are logged in. And what we can see now is we can see the users and where they're coming in from around America. So you see here, this is the main trunk for this particular client, and then they've got a couple of satellite offices, so you can see where the users are coming in. This is a different metric to Server Manager. So Server Manager will give you a non-timed out session count, and what Google Analytics gives you is that they have actually been active in the last 5 minutes. You get your page views per minute and your page views per second as well. So this is really good data for seeing actually how many active users are in JD Edwards at the moment, what sort of activity they're performing, and where they're coming in from. And so what we can, there's a bunch of other reports that we can use based upon this real-time data. Okay. Now we can't report on our special dimensions, and we'll get to that soon, but we can see exactly who's logged on, and we have some idea of what they're doing as well. So we can see here that we've got work order management, change orders, work order management, so we have some indication of what these users are doing right at this very moment in JD Edwards, and there's 35 active, so 35 have touched the screen in the last 5 minutes. Okay. Once again, if we take off the real-time tab and maybe we have a look at the site speed tab, we can look at overview. And this is where things start to get interesting for JD Edwards. And so we can see that the average page load time, so that is, and a very interesting thing about Google Analytics is that it actually measures the client browser time. So that is from when you request the page to when it completely renders on the browser. This is the page load time that you get here. But you can also measure the redirection time, the DNS lookup time, server connection time, etc., etc. Now, another really interesting stat is that it gives the server response time. And so what we've got is we can actually see the time it takes for the server to respond. Then we can factor in what the network traffic is, like the network time, and then we can also see the browser time. And that gives us the ability to look at the performance of our web servers versus our network layer versus our clients. And so we can do that holistically, or we can do that at an individual session basis. And those three factors give us a really good idea of how JD Edwards is performing over the LAN or the WAN. Okay, we can also see here, which is very interesting, the average page load times for these browsers. Now that seems to indicate to me that Chrome is quite a bit faster than Internet Explorer, and so then we could also look at we'd have to look at our overview to see how much these browsers are getting used. So Chrome takes 0.71 and Internet Explorer takes a second. So then what we'd want to do is overlay what browsers people are using to ensure those numbers make sense. And so what we can see here is if we look at the browsers, for this site, Chrome's faster than Internet Explorer, but that's based upon a fairly good count of users. So over the last 2 months, Chrome has supported 10,000 sessions, Internet Explorer supported 40, but on average, Chrome was loading pages in 0.71 of a second and Internet Explorer in 1 second. Now, I know it seems to be insignificant, but I can assure you that if you added the wait time and this is sessions, not page loads, but if you added the wait time for 10,000 sessions, which might equate to 400,000 page loads, that 0.3 of a second would mean a lot of waiting for your end users. And so we can make decisions like this and see that Chrome's faster, and then we can push that through the business to stop that 40 hours of cumulative wait, or ensure that everyone's getting a consistent level of performance from their ERP, from the browser. Okay, so that's just a little bit of an overview. Another nice demonstration that I like to show people is this is our demonstration website data. And then what you're able to do is do a performance-based site speed overview. And then you've got this nice map overlay that I can do based upon page timings. And so what I'm able to demonstrate here is to show you that from all the users around the world, from January the 1st to March the 1st, and I can take this back a little bit further, I can say from December to today, apply this, we can actually see from around the world the average page load time for the last 3-4 months. From the States was 2.4 seconds, but from Russia, you wouldn't want to use our demo system from Russia, the average page load time was 21 seconds. And we can go around the world and see 1.28 for Australia and 1.38 for New Zealand. So we get this really good overall view of our ERP, let's say, and we can see which of our users are getting a good, speedy, consistent result for what we're doing. Okay, and then we can see here, and again, it summarizes the data here to say Australia gets a better than average performance, 22% slower in the States, 96% slower in India. So we can also see information that way. We can even drill down to city if we want to. And then we can see what cities are logging in to our demo system, and then we can see the various performance that they're getting. So Adelaide, Sydney, Melbourne. So it seems like the fastest state is the Central Coast, which is interesting in Australia. And then we can move down. We can say to show as many of these cities as we want, and that demonstrates the various performances, and it gives us something to focus on. So if we wanted to fix performance for a particular region, we might change that internet connection, we might change an attribute to that, and hopefully we can see that performance change down the track. An overall view of what you can do with your data, but now I'm going to show you really specific JD Edwards functionality. So once again, we're going to look at how to improve and evaluate productivity. Now, When I talk about productivity, it's more about how much time your users are spending on a page. So how much time they're spending on the sales order entry page or the GL pages or work order pages. And then also how much they're interacting with the ERP. So I want to show you some functionality that we provide that gives you that information. So what I've got on the left-hand side here when I'm navigating ERP Analytics is I've got custom reports, dashboards and shortcuts. So what I can do is go into my custom reports and I've got a productivity analysis report. Now what we do when we sign users up to the analytics offering, we give you a set of standard reports, and some of those are productivity analysis, performance analysis, and then application analysis, and that'll help you answer all the questions that we're going through today in this session. But let's start with productivity analysis. And we'll start to see custom JD Edwards dimensions. So what we see here, and once again, this is from December the 1st to March the 1st, in terms of productivity analysis, I can see my users and how many page views that they're actually requesting. So I can see that my biggest user here, JDE, has launched 4,855 pages in the last 3 months. Then it comes down to Michael G, etc., etc. So these are the actual JD Edwards usernames that are performing things in your ERP. I've also got a lot of other information about their average page load times. So that's the relative performance for those end users over this period of time, which is also impressive because what I can see is some of my users, the average page load time of 2.65 seconds for 802 pages, whereas some of them are 1.06 seconds. So we can see a very big difference in the page load times for those particular users. Now, if I thought that was really slow, what I can do is actually drill down onto that user and see what days they've been using the ERP. So we can see here, once again, we'll sort by page views, and I can see on the 28th of the 2nd, 2017, they launched 267 pages. So let's drill down into that day. And again, we're focused on productivity here. And then we can see on the hour of the day, so this is an hour index, we can see what pages they went into. And then we can see a minute index. So for that hour, throughout the entire minute, we can see quite a bit of, we can see what they were doing throughout that minute and the page loads. Now that doesn't mean a lot to me, but what I'd like to do is actually look at the page title perhaps. And then when I overlay, when I ask for that secondary dimension, I can see that so we go up to here and we can say on the 5th hour, so that's 5 in the morning, so at 5:57 on the 28th of the 2nd, this particular user launched Purchase Order Workbench, and that took 8.454 seconds, which is pretty slow to load. And actually, let's sort by the time so we can sort of see what they were doing chronologically. And we can see that they were doing item unit and measure conversions. It took 2.89 seconds. Once again, they're going to unit conversions, work with standard units and measure order detail. So we can sort of trace actually what the users are doing. We can trace their journey through the ERP. And this is just one user on the 28th of the 2nd this year. I could do this for someone last year, 2 years ago, and I can do all the comparisons as well. So what you can see here is there's a very detailed view from a productivity point of view of what a user is doing. I've got another couple of reports to show here. So I've created all these dashboards, and you're also able to create any dashboards you like. And once again, as I explained earlier, we give you access to our standardized dashboards, which give you some pretty good insights. What you're seeing here from a productivity point of view is a list of the high used applications. So I'm not applying any filters here. So I'm saying for this particular site for the last 3 months, and this is a demo site, what is the highest used applications, and I can see application version form. So I know the most used applications on my site. And once again, from a productivity point of view, if I wanted to make efficiencies in my business, I could look at this and say, well, if this is the most used application in my site, actually we need to see secondary dimension, page views. Then actually this is the slowest, not the most used. We might go, instead of looking at performance, we might look at usage. So this is a nice view. So this shows us how much time they're spending on the form. So this is in terms of time. So they've spent 1,276, 1.2 million seconds or milliseconds of time on the address book. So it seems like maybe people just load up the address book and leave it there and then go to a different form. But of all of the JD Edwards forms for this particular site, we can see the most time is spent on address book. And I would look at that from a productivity point of view and go, well, if I can make any efficiency changes on that particular form, I'm going to have the most impact to all of my users. So I think it's really cool to look at this data in terms of time spent on screen and then look at productivity improvements that you can make on that. Of course, another really important metric that we look at is the page views. So the number of times a form is loaded is also a critical piece of information to determine whether you'd make changes to that application. So I like to look at the amount of time spent on a screen, and I also like to look at the number of times that screen is loaded, and my combination of those two pieces of information gives me a really good idea of where I should put some development effort if I want to make the biggest changes in my organization. Now, if I was to make a change to one of these applications, so I'll just drill down into this application. These are all my custom reports. This is just an index day of the week to see when that gets used. So I can see for the address book, on Sundays it doesn't get used much, on Mondays it gets used a bit, and so the biggest day of the week, and again this might not mean anything to some people, but just say we were looking at sales order entry and we wanted to see what day of the week most of the sales orders are going into the business. Well, then this might be a very interesting view, because we'll see, all of our orders are coming in on Wednesdays, or people are querying orders on Wednesdays, maybe not the entry form but the query form. So we are able to do that analysis on the data. But I can see here that that the address book is, not that it means much to anyone. The busiest day is on Wednesdays for the address book data. But then what I want to do is let's just look at the last week again. So let's go from Wednesday to Wednesday. And I want to show you this feature, and then I'm going to compare like for like the previous week. And then what you'll see, and this is incredible, I really think this is amazing information. So if we made a change, if we look back up here, if we made a change on Wednesday the 22nd, so we made a change to the P01012, the address book application in JD Edwards, to maybe streamline something or make it faster. We can then compare that information pound for pound on any of our reports. So I can go to any of these reports and it will show me the comparison between our before we've made the change and after we've made the change, and then we will be able to see whether the average page load time is better, and so in this instance it's 59% better since the change. That's fantastic. But our engagement's dropped a little bit, so it's 8% down. But really, I don't want to just see that information for the P01, 012. Maybe I put a new CPU in the database. Maybe I changed the web servers. Maybe I made a really big change. So let's look if there has been a change in overall behaviours or performance in those 2 weeks since I've made that change. And what I can see here is that on average, our page download time's gone down 118% in that time period. And so what we think there is maybe our change wasn't that good. So we're actually able to measure that change. And so from a productivity point of view, using this comparison function, we can actually compare engagement. So we compare time on page, and we can also compare number of times that the application's used based upon changes. So if we make a change for productivity, we can measure that change with this Google Analytics data. It also means that I could actually compare, if I wanted to, I could compare this month, I like to start on Mondays. So Monday the 9th to the 27th, and I want to compare that to Monday the 5th to the 24th. Apply. And then I can compare month on month. And so Analytics has just done some crazy processing and been able to render me this information, and that's a month-on-month comparison of JD Edwards. I can say month-on-month, tell me what users were busier and what weren't, and we can see in terms of page views, if we looked at our highest ranking users, we can see that the JDE user launched 224 pages in that second month, but in the first month only 6. And we can scroll down that data as well to do a productivity month-on-month comparison of our users. So if you run a call center, let's say, we could do those comparisons to see that your call center users have got similar stats in terms of page loads and times on page to ensure that their productivity is up to scratch. And you could also, if you made big improvements in E1 pages, or if you made big improvements with UX1 to really drive your users to do their jobs, hopefully when you make those changes, you would be able to measure them and show the business the difference that's making to how they're interacting with your ERP. Okay, so that's from a productivity point of view. So that's more about, it's not performance. I haven't been focusing on performance here, but from a productivity point of view, you can analyze, slice and dice your user activity per day, per month, per hour, per minute. You can make all of your own custom reports. And then you can also do the same from an application point of view. So if I wanted to make my users more efficient, I can measure them particular ways, and I can send myself any of these reports. So if I like this month-on-month report here, so this is pretty handy, month-on-month, average performance, etc. All I have to do here is say email. I'll say email me. And I want this as a PDF, and it's productivity analysis, and I do that weekly on a Monday and send. And now weekly on a Monday, oops, report attached. Send myself too many emails. So now for the next 3 months, weekly, I'm going to get this comparison report of my demonstration site of performance and actual page views, month-on-month compare. That was pretty easy and pretty quick. And these are the sorts of things you can do with this. Okay, so yeah, and again, if you use Google Sheets, you can use those native APIs to feed Google Sheets real-time for this data as well, for really powerful demonstration and slice and dice capabilities. So hopefully I've shown you some of those insights and what we're able to do in terms of page views and time on page. And that information can be cut however you want it to be. Yeah, and once again, this is because this is the productivity section. This is all about getting more from your users. So maybe getting them to do more clicks, maybe getting them to do more efficient clicking, or maybe getting them to load more pages of a certain type or less pages of a certain type. I've seen people have a problem in their system, so a stability problem at a certain time in the day, and what they do is they come back into their Google Analytics data, they go to the minute of that day, or they go to the minute before the problem of that day, and they see all the activity, and they can sometimes start to really hone in on who's caused the problem because they see what all the users are doing. They overlay that with batch activity, so they go through their work submitted jobs, and so the combination of what ERP Analytics is tracking plus their batch activity gives them a pretty good idea of exactly what's going on in the system just before they had a problem. And it's just another tool that you can use to try and troubleshoot problems in JD Edwards. So the next thing that I wanted to cover off is how to baseline and improve performance in JD Edwards. So Google Analytics is able to record lots, and I touched on this earlier, but it can record lots of very specific data points for page loads and for performance, and in our case, of course, for JD Edwards performance. Once again, I reiterate that this is browser-based timings, so it's not a guess, it's actually what the browser takes to get data from the server to render that data to a user to finish the load of a page. And so I'm not going to read these out to you, but there's specific definitions of all the various columns that you're going to see on my pre-written reports, which is page download time, average document interactive time, average page load time, and page download time. So the combination of these figures gives you some indication of back-end performance, some indication of front-end performance in terms of how fast the client's machine is to render a big page. As you know, with JD Edwards, putting a really big, like rendering a really big grid can take a lot of time. And so that's where you might see quite a difference between the page download time and the page load time. Okay. And so I thought I'd jump back in to my reporting here and show you some of my performance reporting. So I'm just going to use some sample data here. I'm going to go to my shortcuts. And so what I've done is I've got some productivity analysis reports that we just looked at previously. You can see that I'm looking at 3 months of data, so that certainly can take some time, and I'm also doing my comparison. So I'm going to turn that comparison functionality off. And I'm just going to look at, well, actually I'm only looking at January. Let me look at February, sorry. So we'll go Wednesday to Wednesday to Wednesday. Fine. So we'll look at the last month of data, and so then we get a really good idea of our top users here down the right. If I wanted to see the top 100 users, and this is by time on page, but I could also sort that by page views. So I can make a relative comparison of they've done 14,000 page views and they've spent 76 hours in the last month cumulatively on JD Edwards. Remember, you can load multiple screens and they'll accumulate the time. So you might see some people here with 251 hours and you think to yourself, well, there hasn't been 251 work hours in this period, but that's because they'll have multiple screens accumulating time. And so that's why some of the numbers are more for less page views. Okay, but again, it's very interesting data to think that the person who's loaded the most pages, the busiest user for this particular site, they've loaded up 14,500 pages, but only cumulatively spent 76 hours on the screen. And then we look at this user here who's launched a similar 13,000 pages, but cumulatively spent 251 hours against the screen. So these are very different users, and it'd be interesting to, drill down on these users and see what they're actually doing. And so then we can do that daily, weekly analysis, etc., etc. But I'm here to talk about performance. So let's go back to my shortcuts. I'll go to my performance view. So we're looking at the last 4 weeks of performance, and what you'll see here is I can compare my environment. So if you have a training environment, a testing environment, etc., you can slice and dice your data based upon that. You can see the relative activities in those environments. We'll talk about this more in the next section when I talk about making your upgrade easier. But you can see what activity's gone on in your testing environment and what activity's gone on in your training environment. You can tell test saturation, you can tell training saturation, you can run reports to compare the different, what has been run in production in the last 3 months and what hasn't been run in test. And you get a pretty good idea of what you need to test in your test environment if you were testing an ESU or an upgrade or something like that. It's a fantastic way to divide the activity in your JD Edwards environments. I'll go into production. And you can see here quickly, these are our users in production, how many page views they've done, session duration, and average page download time for those particular users. Now, download time's not always the best indication. When you're on a LAN, you'll usually find that download time's pretty quick. It's when your users start WANing or they're using, big pages, which is a little bit rare in JD Edwards. You don't see as the information for page download time is not that helpful. Here we can look from a performance point of view in terms of page views, redirection time, etc. for each of the applications. But I want to look at performance averages. And so now I look at my screens. So these are all my different forms in JD Edwards, and actually I want to see app ID as well, so this would be handy. So now I can see my, actually, let me, sorry about that. So now I can see my application ID, so I can see they're in 4310, this particular version, and the average content download time is 2.88 seconds, but it's only been loaded once in that last month, so I'm not too concerned about that. So let's look at my page views. I'll sort by the most used page, and so the most used page is sales order inquiry, so it's a particular version of that. The average content loaded time, and if you want to know what that actually means, you can hover over the question mark, and that's the average time in seconds that the browser takes to parse the document and execute deferred and parser inserted scripts. So actually load the entire form on the client side is 0.8 of a second, which is pretty good. So we're having sub-second performance for 21,000 page views of this particular application. And we can scroll down, and 1.02, so the stock return screen's quite a little bit slower for 11,000 page views. So, potentially there's an opportunity to do something there from a performance perspective. What we can do here is, if we wanted to see the top 100 applications based upon page views, give us the average performance information, give us a friendly name, and the actual details of the version, form and application, and then we could choose to send that to us on a monthly, weekly basis. So we know we can form a pattern of what's changing in our ERP and how people are using it. Time on page is not as important for performance, so we're really focused on performance here, although we do see the average page load time as well. So we can see the amount of time people are spending on the page, and it's 6.86% of the total for this particular screen, which is the sales order inquiry, and the load time, so the complete time, is 0.84 of a second. And we can go down and look at our data that way as well. If we wanted to drill down on this particular application, I can choose sales order inquiry, and once again I've defined this report, and we talked about this earlier. I can see on a normal day, the hourly analysis based upon the last month, so February the 8th to March the 1st, on an hourly basis. People must log in about 7 a.m. and then they scroll through the day. This is lunchtime, so it eases off a little bit, and then peters off in the afternoon. So in the last month, I can see on an hourly basis the performance of this application as well. So we can see that at 12 o'clock the performance is lowest, and at 8 in the morning it's the quickest, or even and 5 in the evening it's the quickest. So we can do performance analysis, so we can do page load time. So we can choose to compare our page load time and page views on the graph to see when things speed up, and so you can see that that's fairly consistent performance. What you'll find here is that someone's logged in at 5 in the morning and they generally get a bit of a hit because they'll be loading up the caches and stuff for the web server. So quite often you'll see a bit of a blip in the beginning. Quite often you'll also see Sundays are a slow day because the first people to log in on a Sunday, maybe the system's been restarted and they have to refresh all the web server caches and things, so it's a bit slower. But this is the most used application for this particular site, and now we're doing an hourly analysis of how long it takes to load the page on average, and also how often it's used. So there's some pretty good information here about sales order inquiries in this organisation. We can drill down on one of these hours as well. So I might choose to drill down at 10 in the morning. And I've defined this to then go on a minute-by-minute analysis. And I can see minute by minute what that performance is for that application. And so that might help me troubleshoot. That's not going to help me troubleshoot an overall issue, but a particular user's issue. So minute 50, I've defined this dimension to now tell me the users. So these are all the users, and I'll choose to see them all. That's the top 10. So I find this amazing information. So this is the 50th minute. So at 10:50, using this application in PD for this particular site, I can see that these 25 users loaded that application in that time. A. Hessman did it 5 times. I can see that they spent 5 minutes for that time. They spent a cumulative 5 minutes, and the average page load time for that particular user was 0.74, which was actually higher than the average of 1.07 for that particular point in time. So we can have amazing granular analysis of performance from this, and then of course we can do overall performance, or we can go right down to the minute of the day in the application and see the load times for that particular application, and also do our comparisons. So compare month on month, week on week, day on day. So we can make changes for performance. We can augment our web servers, we can put in a bigger database server, and we can measure the exact improvements that has made to our user community. I've got some other reports here that I've defined. So this is based on SOE compliance. What I'll do is I'll go back to all the data. So that showed me that of those users that launched the sales order inquiry screen on that day, on that minute, what browsers they were using. We can do that information as well. So we can see here, based upon technology, DV slower than, so PY is the fastest environment, which is surprising based upon a small subset of data, and then it's production. If we look at our technology report here, we can see that they use quite a bit of, they use a tiny bit of Safari, But that is the slowest browser, then Internet Explorer, then Firefox, and then Chrome. I think you might be seeing a pattern here. I find that across all of my clients that Chrome is the fastest browser, although you do take that hit on the flexibility of the ActiveX controls because you don't have that functionality in Chrome. But in terms of just end user stuff, we are talking 0.3 of a second, and I know that can make hours of difference. I did a calculation for a site recently where 0.3 of a second on average meant 48 hours of cumulative wait every month. So that means the entire business for the concurrency that they were experiencing, which was about 75 users, I believe, we saw that people would be waiting around for an extra 48 hours just to wait for their screens to load, and you can measure that, and you can put a money value on that as well. We can look at the desktop operating system. So this is a bit of SOE compliance for this. I'm running out of time. So we can see the various operating systems that are being used. Sorry. So let me just go quickly back to my presentation. So that's an overall view of performance. Hopefully you can see the sort of power that you can do there. Any of the analysis, any of the comparisons. If you put in new kit, you can do that really accurate comparison reporting. You can actually send yourself week-on-week reports if you want to do that, or you can deep dive to find specific performance problems. Now, finally, I just want to talk about upgrade projects and the value that you can get out of organising your upgrade project with this data. And I recommend, and I go to clients, and we do upgrades based upon this data. So I know this is a big claim to save money and time with organising your upgrade project, but what if you knew exactly what applications were being used, how often they were being used, what users were actually using them, and of course all the performance metrics around that. But the combination of that information, because we can easily get all the batch reports, so that's simple, and then we can get all the programs from Google Analytics. We can use cross-reference to quickly determine all the other associated data structures and templates and tables and views based upon the applications and reports that are being used. And then we can cross-reference that to the objects in JD Edwards to see what you should be upgrading. And I know for a fact that when I do that analysis, when I look at that data, I've saved clients hundreds of objects because they simply haven't been used. And this is called technical debt. When you have technology solutions, or when you spend money and time on something that you don't need to continue carrying forward, it's called technical debt. And what we're doing is we're reducing your technical debt, because that not only costs you for the current upgrade, it costs you every time you apply an ESU if you have to do retrofit on something that's not getting used, because JD Edwards doesn't know that. If you do impact analysis, it just comes up as a mod and you have to retrofit that mod. But what we're showing you here is that in the last 6 months even of ERP usage, we can tell you what applications have been used, who's used them, and you can overlay that against your upgrade data. So that tells you for retrofit purposes, but it also allows you to coordinate all of your testing, because you know what applications are being used from Google Analytics, you know how often they're being used. And wait up, you can actually identify the best people in the business to do the testing, because they're the people that are using that application the most. All of that information can come from Google Analytics. So not only identify all the apps that need to be tested, but the best users for actually testing those apps. You can send them a note, say, hey, could you test our new environment? Put them up on a pedestal, and then you know the power users are actually doing the testing. And you can also look at your test environment, let's say your JD Edwards 9.2 test environment, and see that it has been loaded, and it's been loaded 50 times or 60 times, and you can start to get a little bit of an idea that your testing is running well. Again, for training, same thing. You can look at your training environment and see that the apps are being loaded. And it's another really good way of organizing training, because you know what apps are being used the most in your business. So you know what you have to train on. You also know all the users that are using those apps. So you know who to train. So Google Analytics really opens up some careful analysis of what needs to be done in terms of development, retrofit, testing and training, but also allows you to ratify and check that those activities are being done because it's turned on in your test environments, because it's turned on in your training environments. You can report over those and make sure that everything that's getting run in production is being tested and trained. Of course, that's easy for work submitted jobs. We can do some quick analysis there, but now you can do it for interactive programs with Google Analytics. And so what we tend to do is we define our projects based upon this. So we can look at the applications that people are using. We can put those we can identify those into the level 1, level 2, level 3 processes, and then design all of our testing and training around those processes. So we have process, we have highly used applications, and then we can ensure that the test saturation and training saturation is up to scratch based upon our Google Analytics data. Again, I've touched on this, but you can see test saturation data. So that's my time. But so I'm just going to have a quick, for the people that are still on, we've got a quick report on upgrade analysis. And so quite quickly I can see for this particular site, in terms of page views, heavily used applications, we can see the P4210's number 1, P03B2002, etc., etc. So we can go down this list and we can say, show me the top 500, and that's handy. But I would never base my upgrade analysis on only 1 month of data. So what I do is I'll go back 4 months of data and I'll hit apply. And this is, so I've just gone through and processed the most highly used applications in a production environment for the last 4 months. I've just processed over 3 million page views in JD Edwards, and I've seen the top applications. I can drill down into these applications. I can tell you the top users. I can tell you the top times of day, etc. I can analyze all that information. I can look at customization. So I find a P55 and I know we're going to have to work on that. I know if P4210's customized, I'm really going to have to be careful of that in the upgrade. And so I can do deep analysis on all of these aspects. I can extract this into a CSV. I can slice and dice this data in Excel to make sure that my testing and training and production environment is up to scratch if I'm considering an upgrade. So really align my upgrade to what my users are actually doing. And so just finally, sorry I had to rush through that last section. I get carried away. What's next? Well, if you're interested in this, if this is something we're presenting at Collaborate, we're going to be at Collaborate, and so if you're going to be at Collaborate, it'd be great for you to come and say hi. You could bring your tools release on and we can patch it on the spot. It only takes a couple of minutes for us to do that. We can set you up with a Google Analytics ID, and you'll be able to see your site's data. We deliver it as a tools release, so what your CNC people will do, or what we can do for you, is we take your PAR file, we patch it, we give it back to you. You load that up into your Server Manager console. It's very easily identifiable as a Google Analytics build, and you can choose to deploy that to your development environment, do some testing. If you're happy with that, go to PY, go to UA, go to production. So you're in charge of the deployment of this tools release. We just give you a patch tools release. As soon as that goes to an environment, it starts sending data to Google Analytics. I've done performance testing on this. It has an insignificant hit on performance, like less than 1% in terms of traffic, but you look at the data and you look at what you get out of it, and it's impressive. You can turn it off at any time you like, because you just have to undeploy that particular Google Analytics build. Every time you take a tools release and you want Google Analytics built into it, what you do is you upload it to a particular site, we patch it, we've got an automated patching routine, and we give it back. We charge on a per site, so per client, per month basis, and that is for the Google Analytics console access. It's for all of our predefined reports. and so we give you all of that information, and of course you can slice and dice your data the way you want to. And we charge a one-off fee for patching a tools release of $500 US for the patching, and that's patching, setting you up with a Google Analytics ID, setting you up with console access, and giving you instructions on where to find all those basic information. So that's a one-off fee for that. You can choose to disable this functionality whenever you want, and then the monthly access fee doesn't apply. So you might want to run it for 3 months before an upgrade to see what apps are being used to organize your upgrade. You might want to run it through a bit of testing and training, and then maybe you want to run it in production for a little while to make sure your performance baseline's up to scratch in your new environment, and then you could turn it off if you wished. Lucky last. So that is my last slide. So sorry for rushing through there at the end. I'm opening the floor to any questions if anyone would like to ask any questions. No, that's good. So my email address there is there, shannon.moir@myriadit.com. That is still my email address, despite what I said about the merge of Fusion 5 and Myriad IT. If you have any particular questions, or if you'd like to arrange a one-on-one phone call, please just drop me an email, and I'd be happy to go through a one-on-one demo, or any information about the product, any specific questions that you might have. But thank you all for listening in. I hope you found some of that content interesting. It'd be great to hear from you soon.